and a migration pathway. Because what we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years is a very rapid increase in Indian students in Australia, motivated essentially by securing permanent residence rather than to study in Australia. And while we have no problem with Indians who study in Australia seeking to apply for migration, we do want to make it clear that a student visa is for studying and a migration visa is for migration.
They can't use the study route to settle there.
Not as the primary motivation.
Yes.
So I think all of these changes have had a positive impact, and I'm hopeful now that the issue is behind us and we can focus on more constructive things in the bilateral relationship.
We'll take a short break here. We are in conversation with Mr. Peter Varghese, the Australian High Commissioner to India. Mr. Varghese, last year the number of students who had gone to Australia to study had come down. What is the status now?
Well, we'll see a very big reduction in the number of students coming to Australia, and for the most part that reflects the policy changes we've made in relation to the student pathway and the migration pathway. Because if you accept that the prime motivation in the last 4 or 5 years for the great majority of Indian students going to Australia was a migration objective and not a study objective, then naturally if you block one, it's going to have an
impact. How much of the reduction is due to the racial attacks?
Oh, I don't. Well, it's very hard to be precise about this, but I don't think the problems we've had with attacks is anywhere near the dominant reason for the reduction. I think the dominant reason for the reduction are the changes we've made to migration criteria and policy, changes to our skilled migration list, and also the additional measures we've taken to ensure the integrity of our visa program.
You once mentioned that the number of students had gone up from 30,000 to 100,000.
Yes.
What is the number now?
Well, the number now is not far from 100,000 because typically students are there for 2, 3 or 4 years, so we won't see the drop in applications reflected in the aggregate numbers for a little while. But we will have the job of rebuilding this education relationship and rebuilding the numbers, and when we do that we want to ensure that it's on a more quality footing. One of the things we want to do is to change the mix of the students so that there's a higher proportion going to universities rather than to private vocational training, and we want to increase the linkages between Australian universities and Indian universities, including here in the Punjab and in Haryana. One of the things I want to do on this trip is to try and promote those sorts of linkages.
So what percentage of students in Australia are from this part, Punjab and Haryana?
Well, Punjab has probably provided the single largest component of our students in Australia, so we tend not to keep particularly detailed information on which particular part of India students have come from, but I think Punjab is clearly been the largest component.
And what is the policy of the Australian government towards people who are not necessarily going there for a study but to work and possibly settle?
Well, we're a country of migration. We want migrants. We encourage migrants, but we want migrants who meet the needs of the Australian nation now and into the future. So
which are the preferred categories where you would want people to go, if at all?
Well, we now every year publish a list of skills that are in short supply in Australia and reflects our labour market needs, and there are about 100 or so occupations on that list. And Indians do very well in terms of applications. India is now our second largest source of skilled migrants. And when you take together the English language ability and the professional qualifications of many Indian applications, I can see India continuing to be a very important part of our migration program. So while the mix may well change, I think we're seeing an Indian diaspora in Australia which is going to grow quite quickly in the next decade or so.
Which are the other areas, High Commissioner, where you see India and Australia engaging in a more meaningful manner?
Well, I think the economic trade and investment relationship is going to be the driver of this relationship. I mean, we're in this wonderful position where the Indian economy is surging, and the complementarity between the Indian and the Australian economies is getting closer and closer. It's clearly reflected in the commodities and energy relationship, where Indian demand and Australian capacity to supply fit very neatly. But one of the things we want to do is to broaden the base of this economic relationship into other areas, including the finance sector and information technology.
What about defence? Are some specific proposals under consideration as far as training or otherwise?
Defence, in terms of defence exports, I think will always remain a very small component. I mean, Australia is not a big exporter of defence equipment. We have some niche capabilities in electronics and surveillance, and there may be opportunities for us to do things with India in that. But
don't you think the two navies could associate more closely?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think beyond defence industry, if you look at the security, strategic and defence relationship, there's a lot more that Australia can do. And the maritime sector and naval cooperation I'd put very high on my list there, and we do want to do more. We'd like to see a regular pattern of naval exercises between Australia and India. We've recently inaugurated a strategic defence dialogue with India, which I think is a very important step. The heads of our defence forces, the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, are now visiting each other virtually on an annual basis. So I think we are making progress in building this relationship.
What about this region, High Commissioner? Anything specific, what brings you to Chandigarh this time?
Well, I'm here to open a trade office. This will be one of 11 trade offices that we will have across India. And we have identified agriculture, agribusiness, the dairy sector, water resource management, dry land farming, education and information technology as areas where we think we could be doing more with.
Since the trade office is opened in Panchkula, any particular reason why it has opened in Haryana and not in Chandigarh or in Punjab or in Himachal?
Well, it's a very prosaic reason, and that is we had difficulty finding an appropriate office here, and so this was the next best option.
Any proposal to set up a consulate like some countries have done or are proposing to do in Chandigarh?
We don't have at the moment. I mean, we only have two consulates general in India, one in Mumbai and one in Chennai, but by expanding the number of trade offices, we hope to improve our reach into northern India.
It's very interesting. One of the Australian artists has made sketches and some other artwork relating to the Punjabis in Australia. I think you also saw and inaugurated the exhibition.
Yes, I did last night. Yes. Well, I mean, I think it's a wonderful exhibition, and it's a wonderful story at a number of levels. I mean, this is a young artist who happened to come into personal contact with a group of Sikh taxi drivers in Adelaide, and he was very taken by that encounter and very disturbed by the image of Australia that was being projected in parts of India as a racist country. So this exhibition, these works of art, are sort of his personal statement, if you like, about Australia and India, and about the personal bonds between Australian and Indians.
But some of that artwork is amazing, and people are very moved by what he's depicting.
Well, I think it's wonderful art in itself, but it's very honest art. I mean, I think if you talk to the artist, you can see that his motivations were extraordinarily sincere, and I think it sends a wonderful message. I mean,
absolutely.
From my point of view, it's a great exhibition.
Mr. Varghese, this area, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh and Punjab, is primarily agricultural.
Yes.
So is this one field where there is a lot of scope between India and for cooperation between India and Australia?
I think so, and as I mentioned, the dairy sector is one part of agriculture that we want to work on. I think this whole question of from the farm to the fork, the logistics chain, supply chain management, cold storage, all of that, That's another area where Australia and this part of India can work well together, because we have some expertise in that area, and both in terms of technology and logistics management, which may be of interest to
Last May, I think the Australian Trade Commission organized a seminar in Ludhiana. Did something concrete come out of it?
Well, I think with all of these seminars, they serve two purposes. One is they raise awareness of capabilities and expertise, and secondly, they expand networks. So I think, you know, it's one of those things that you just keep working on, and sometimes an exhibition will lead to very direct deals, sometimes it will lead to ideas and proposals, and you need to take a longer term view of it all.
Mr. Varghese, you took some unusual steps to strengthen the bonds between the two countries. I think you invited the Indian music maestro A.R. Rahman to work with some Australian directors. Now, has some forward movement taken place in that direction?
Well, we're doing quite a lot actually in terms of artistic collaboration between Australia and India. And in fact, we're designating 2012 as the year of Australia and India, so we're planning a very big promotion of Australia, and a key element of that will be collaborative efforts between Australian and Indian artists.
Will anything be organized in this part of the country, in the northern states?
Yes, we certainly will want to do something in the northern states. This is something we want to try and push well out of Delhi, cover as much of India as possible. So we're obviously still in the planning stages, but that would be very much on our list.
But what else do you plan for this region? As I said, this is a very diverse, a huge region actually. We have close to 5 to 6 states, J&K, Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, Punjab and Chandigarh. Anything else?
Well, this evening I'm inaugurating another exhibition, which is an exhibition of Australian Aboriginal desert art from Western Australia. These are all, you know, small steps that you take to increase the knowledge and understanding of Australia and India, and I think the mirror steps are also being taken in Australia, because my view is that in each of our countries there is a very outdated view of the other, and if we want to build a real partnership, then that's going to also have to involve understanding each other better at the community level, and you don't do this by one big action. There's not one exhibition or one cultural performance or one grand concert that's going to achieve this. I mean, this is a slow and evolving process, and it involves strengthening links between individuals, between institutions, between artistic communities, using the media and other cultural platforms, and I think you need a long-term view of it. I mean, you just have to keep working at it.
Absolutely, I think very well, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Varghese, for coming to us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we end this edition of Fair and Square with Mr. Peter Varghese, Australian High Commissioner to India. We meet again next week, same time, with another eminent personality. Good luck and goodbye.